Hello and welcome to another RV on AV. I'm Rich Ventura, the Vice President for Sony's PDSA organization, and I'm really excited about this month's conversation. We've got just some amazing industry leaders that we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff around tech trends that we're seeing in the industry, and we're going to be talking about collaboration and experiences and what we can do to build long-term engagement. So this is gonna be a fun conversation. So enough of me talking. Let's have the panelists talk. So I'm going to introduce our esteemed group here. Megan Zeller from Peerless-AV, Kirsten Gibson from Reach Media Network, Katie Valid from MediaVue, and last but not least, Scott Simpson from AVI-SPL's XTG group. So real quick, I'm going to have you guys talk a little bit about your organization and what you do. And I'm going to start with Megan. Ms. Zeller, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here. My name is Megan Zeller. I have been with Peerless-AV for 7 years, starting in the hospitality division. And now I head up our efforts for DirectView LED signage solutions.
Excellent. And Kirsten.
Hi, I'm Kirsten Gibson from Reach Media Network. I'm also very excited to be here. I've been with Reach for about 10 years now, and I manage our sales and marketing teams. Before that, I did a lot of business development and managed our customer success teams.
Excellent. Katie.
Hey everybody, I'm Katie Valley. I'm the EVP of Global Sales here at MediaVue Systems. I've been at MediaVue now almost a year, not quite, but I've spent about 18 years of my career in AV, working across the industry from integrators to manufacturers, software providers, so forth and so on. And MediaVue is a hardware software platform provider that focuses on remote monitoring, management, and full-scale digital signage platform-based solutions, not content, for AV. So thank you, Rich.
Excellent. And Scott. Scott, you're on mute. We always get one, Scott.
Let me get an AV expert in here. So my name is Scott Simpson. I'm with the XTG group within AVI-SPL. I've been in audiovisual for 30 years now, and with a focus the last decade with experiential projects. And so the XTG team focuses on projects that are out of the ordinary with a next level of integration of technology with in spaces with design, with content developers. We kind of bring together those high-end spaces like executive briefing centers, customer innovation centers, high-end retail, and museums. And so all the fun, weird projects.
Perfect. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, everyone. So, like I said, we're going to talk a lot about tech trends today. And I think probably one of the dominating ones that we're hearing a lot about out there really is around building experiences. And, let's start at the high level, then we'll kind of work our way down more granular. But let's talk about building experiences. We saw this at InfoComm. We saw experiences everywhere. We hear that term. I mean, Scott, the organization you're part of is XTG. It's Experiences Group, right? So maybe let's start a little bit with Scott and talk about, what are you seeing from a trend and what kind of technologies and things like that are going into these experiences?
Well, I think one of the things I'm seeing a lot of experiences that we used to see more in high-end executive briefing centers. So spaces where, high-end brands would be a museum to their brands. They'd bring in their high-end clients and have collaborative spaces that are, next level. We see those going more towards Workspace 2.0. And we're seeing a lot more companies wanting to make the workspace a destination rather than a place that you have to go. So giving them tools, dynamic tools for collaboration. Seeing a lot of software now that allows you to instantly pull from content development or content CMSs, content management systems, and instantly bring up applications like Miro or collaborative applications, Bolero, and really kind of bring the, have nonlinear meetings and see, and allow those meetings to go anywhere, and then have multiple spaces that are dynamic, that are multi-use, so that can, spaces that can change for whatever scenario or wherever the meeting requires. And then we're also seeing a lot in XR experiences and people wanting to bring production quality, video to the workplace. So giving people tools to have those next level high production video calls rather than just a Zoom room with a background.
Okay. So, one thing, Scott, you mentioned was, pulling content and information from CMSs and stuff like that. Kirsten, you think about what you're seeing and experiences and stuff like that coming from the software world, right? I mean, there's got to be a lot going on in your space.
Yes. Yeah, it's ever evolving. I always say, looking even back 3 months ago, it changes in terms of the use cases that end users are looking for, and integrators and resellers are trying to accomplish that. So one thing, for example, kind of going back to what Scott was saying about collaborative spaces, it's expanding kind of that day-to-day digital signage and adding on that piece. So being able to have digital signage run as a screensaver and things like that. But not only in the collaborative spaces, one thing we're actually seeing, especially with corporate clients that have, say, plants out there, manufacturing plants, is making that an experience with digital. So, like tour stops, having the ability to stop at a certain area in a plant and showcase maybe some of their work, maybe some of their KPIs, and easily be able to, say, touch the screen and a video pops up on another screen. So I would say those type of experiences from a CMS side, the ability to push down that content globally, right? So if each plant had that same experience going on, corporates easily able to push down that content with a click of a button.
Okay, great. So Megan, you guys, Peerless, you're really kind of the structure behind these experiences, right? And I mean, but you're also getting heavily involved with the CMS companies and the controllers and the media players and the displays, stuff like that. What are you seeing happening in this space?
Well, we're seeing a lot of the same. We've done a lot of global rollouts with Fortune 10, Fortune 50 companies. So it is something where they're adding DirectView LED in their public spaces, in their cafeterias, obviously in the boardrooms. So anywhere they can for employee engagement to get them to want to be there versus forcing them to be there, as we know that most companies right now are asking people to return to work and kind of modify the hybrid work situation where it was optional certain days of the week. Now I think it's becoming mandatory certain days of the week. So I think they're looking for new ways to engage and, advise people to want to be there and inform them while they are there.
Yeah, perfect. So Katie, now, we talked about the software, we talked about the infrastructure and like that. I mean, a big part of that infrastructure too is our controllers, media players, and devices. What trends are happening that are helping you guys decide, what you're going to do with your devices, how you're building the MediaVue players? Are they getting larger, smaller? What tech you're adding into it? What all are you seeing from that perspective?
Sure. So from our perspective, it's very much a combination of what the rest of the panel has kind of highlighted. And when we're moving from environments that are attempting to draw people back into the workplace or draw people into a more unique environment, still enabling those environments for multiple use cases while highlighting the investment that an enterprise organization has made into that tech is becoming extremely important. So the spaces may not look so much like a traditional meeting room or huddle space anymore. It might look like a cafe, or it might look like a, generic coffee house or just a lobby style environment. So the need to be able to power things like large scale LED walls, large format tiled arrays, and then migrate very easily and seamlessly between a content driven environment like, Kirsten's style CMS environment into something that AVI-SPL may play more in outside of XTG, which is UCC and collaborative environments like the one we're in now, how do you get the best use out of that environment with the same back end, right? The same structure and platform that you put in place to swap between those things or to enable the best technical experience as you modify that environment for each use. So MediaVue's really worked to create devices that are highly reliable, highly functional, so that when we modify these environments for clients or when we get approached for these scenarios, that we're enabling them to be appropriate for the CMS, appropriate for the UCC environment, appropriate for any other soft stack that might be sitting on that hardware device, that media player. And then it's our job, obviously, to make sure that the inner workings of those units are capable of reaching a multitude of environments in a singular space or singular experience. So.
It's amazing. I was having a conversation with someone earlier today, and our business has become a lot more IT centric than AV. Think about what it was like. I mean, Katie, you and I have worked in the display industry for quite a few years. It was all AV, 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 AV. Now we're talking so much IT. I mean, we're talking about cloud and things that we didn't think about before. And, even think about one of the biggest buzzwords we have in the industry right now is AI. And if you think about the trend that AI is impacting us, right, it's not just going and pulling information off the web. I mean, I'm seeing design builds now being done with AI. So, Scott, obviously in the XTG group, we look at things like AI and VR and AR and VP for virtual production, all these new words that have been coming out in our industry. I mean, how is that impacting your conversations with customers?
Well, obviously, all of these come into play with different scenarios. VR, we're doing a lot of VR XR environments for clients who want to see that next level of visualization, and we're seeing less interest in, say, the metaverse, but more interest in actual using VR tools in the workplace. As far as AI at this point, more behind the scenes, we're seeing AI becoming part of AV. Right now, we're still in that early phase where everyone is in the wow and shock and just playing around with Chat GPT. But behind the scenes, there's a lot going on, particularly in, say, for instance, events where we could use facial recognition to when you walk into a space and have your everything queued up, the lighting perfect, everything ready for, that Rich comes in at this time. This is what Rich usually has queued up. This is the lighting that Rich likes. These are the people and participants that are in his meeting. And I know I'm talking about the UC space, but that's a lot of what we do as well in XTG is we're brought in for these spaces that are multidisciplinary efforts to make an experience out of the workplace and out of briefing centers. And a lot of that AI is playing a big role in that, in kind of serving up exactly what you need when you need it.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to think that a simple, I don't want to use the term simple tool, but a tool we've actually all been talking about for such a long time in the last 6 months is making a massive impact into our business and our day to day, right? And, if you look at one of the things that I found really interesting in a lot of these conversations that we have is that it used to just be, well, we're going to play around with this tool, whether it's AI, VI, or whatever, but I got a specialist over here. And that's the only guy who's going to touch this. And then I got a specialist for this. Now everyone's starting to become generalists because it is starting to deploy more and more in our environment. And if you think about digital signage, that made that change about 6 years ago because it was your specialist guys, right? And so, Kirsten, in being in the software world, everything you guys deal in the software world, how much impact is AI or even VR or any of these things? How much is that impacting, or how much are you seeing a trend happen in your space?
For us, I'd say kind of along with Scott, it's still kind of preliminary, but I would say, next year, InfoComm, that could be a completely different conversation that we're having too. One thing, about our CMS, we were built off integrations. I mean, that's how we started day one 17 years ago. It's still very relevant to our business at this point. But what we're seeing, especially, we've seen a couple of universities come to us with the need to integrate AI for content. So one example I'll give you is, we're pulling in calendars and things like that, that can scroll on the side, your very standard simple signage, but the ability to take those events and then create content with it. So we have a couple of universities that are actually using AI to do that. So there is no need for a person to basically be managing their digital signage, which is one thing that we find a struggle with clients that implement digital signage. It's like, okay, say you get a video all up and running, say you get, your screen's up and running. Who's actually doing the day-to-day management? You might have one person that's kind of part-time in it. They might leave, then the content gets stale. So I'd say AI is going to help eliminate that, from an integration standpoint as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things that, giving a little bit of a plug to Sony, since kind of we host these webinars, one of the things that we did is we actually had an AI artist in our booth at Infocom. If you saw our front wall, a bunch of the content was actually generated with AI algorithms. And that is changing content creation now. And we're seeing that as part of what's going on, obviously, in Hollywood, and there's a lot of stuff going on about that. But we're seeing that in the content space. And it's interesting that, Kirsten, what you bring up, that companies are looking at that, because that is one of the hardest things, is feeding the beast. That content gets stale like within seconds after you send it. If you don't have a plan, how are you going to get around it? And Katie, if we think about all this level of content, we need some pretty beefy media players nowadays, don't we?
Right. And, beyond just the media player itself, you have to think about the platform that's supporting that as well. So for me, AI is one of those things that I'm not surprised to see. This convergence of IT and AV has been happening for years now, and it's really been heightened over the past 4-ish years, with AV operation teams at enterprise in multiple style clients, really being tasked to manage more and more digital endpoints, whether those are players, whether they're displays, whether they're Sony AI enabled cameras, whatever those things might be. And instead of it being a clear division between the IT group doing certain things and the AV group doing certain things, that's all in one place now, or much more in one place. And the traditional AV role has expanded tremendously to encompass the requirement to manage tons of ancillary soft stack licenses, as well as a multitude of digital endpoints, whether they be a physical media player or not. So from my perspective, AI is a term that means something probably different to everyone on this call, right? We all can utilize and leverage it different ways. But for myself and for MediaVue, it's about the automation and generation and management of those physical endpoints themselves, right? So how do we enable those AV teams to more appropriately manage all of those disparate endpoints, all of those disparate digital displays or media players or LED walls or tiled arrays or controllers, whatever they might be, audio as well. So for us, the issue is really managing all of those different things, and how are we going to solve that problem? So I can say with extreme confidence that I've seen some really impressive and impactful solutions to this issue. Though they're premature at this stage, the industry is absolutely adopting them, absolutely thinking of them, and MediaVue is highly focused on solving that and bringing the solution to bear that speaks to that for the AV user at the end of the day, whether that's hardware or soft stack related.
Okay. So Megan, think about all these these beautiful LED structures that are going in nowadays. How much impact is content that's created by AI or some of these strategies you heard of? We haven't seen any impact in how they're being designed I mean, are they thinking new structure designs, more curves, more circles, more shapes?
Yeah, we are seeing an influx of requests for curved screens, unique arrays. We did one for the first American museums in Oklahoma that was curved and also had a cutout in the center. So something extremely artistic. So we are seeing form factors changing, which obviously makes engineering a bit more difficult. For us, we have to get the cabinets in house, do some testing. We actually do thermal spacing once the cabinets are powered on. So we're taking it to a new level, especially as we get into like a 0.9 millimeter pixel pitch. It has to be extremely precise. So certainly a lot of adjustment on site as well for the installation. So yes, as there's curves, 90-degree corners, unique shapes and arrays, it is driving up the cost just based on the engineering resources that have to go into it. But yeah, I would say the demand has probably doubled for curved and unique arrays in the last year. So yeah, it's something we see every day. I can tell you, I think there's about 10 in my inbox just today for unique arrays that people are looking for something that's experiential and something unique. Especially in the, XR stages. I mean, everybody wants, something curved. So
Yep.
that seems to be how it is. So it looks real. You look at the Mandalorian set and that's a curved screen. And to think that they've done 99% of their filming with that curved LED behind them. So incredible.
Yeah, and I think that brings us into the next part of our topic, really, and that's around XR stages and virtual production. Because I think that is, Scott talked about some of the transformation that's happening in the office, but we're also got to think about the transformation of what the ways technology is being used. And one of the big ways really is virtual production in XR. And I mean, you think about when we went to Infocom last year, there were a few stages there. This year, everybody's in the virtual production business, whether they really are or aren't. Everyone comes to be part of it. So, Scott, I'll start with you a little bit with XTG. I mean, I know even in the AVI-SPL booth, you guys had a setup at ISE as well as at Infocom. What are you guys seeing in this space?
Well, one thing we're seeing is that the cost of entry is coming down a lot. And that's one thing we tried to show with our space, the XTG space. It was a collaboration that we did with the Skies and our partner Purple. And we put together an XR stage that was the size of about 2 cubicles. So we're showing how you can use office space that's not being used anymore and create an experience, an LED backdrop, but then extend that with software to make it a larger experience, a larger backdrop that looks like what you have with the Mandalorian on a smaller scale, but actually having that XR stage that takes those those all hands meetings, those those large enterprise level broadcasts to a whole new level. And so that's one thing we tried to do with that smaller footprint is show you don't have to have a huge stage to do this. You can do this with just, the space where a couple of those workers are working remotely now. That space can be utilized and you can have a little production studio right there.
Yeah, I think we showed at Infocom that very setup, right? I think everyone thinks immediately when they're thinking virtual production, and Sony, we have a virtual production team, but they immediately think about The Mandalorian and all these movies. They forget that corporate and education actually is a huge consumer of virtual production and XR studios, and it's definitely an area. I think Megan, you talked about lots of shapes, lots of curves, lots of differences. We've got to have strong processes for it, but I think we're going to see more and more companies looking at, and honestly, it's the other benefit is it's a reduction in travel costs. I mean, if you can have your setup, yeah, exactly. You can have your setup at corporate, you can be doing a lot of things from a centralized spot. So I think as an integrator, I know I'm glad to see AVI-SPL doing that. I think everybody should be looking at this, and all of us manufacturers. I don't know how it plays in the signage spot yet. We're kind of look at that, but I think there's a lot of areas though that everyone can play in virtual production.
Yeah, I was going to say it really hasn't hit us quite yet. But the conversations around it, I was just on a call with a university a couple weeks ago, and they just started talking about it. It's more or less the ownership of it, right? And who's going to be doing it. And when you implement something like that, it's not just the front end, kind of going back to my point, it's the ongoing. So spending the money on it, especially with, the hardware and everything, that's great. But who's actually going to be utilizing it from a day-to-day basis? Who's owning that virtual production at the end of the day? So again, it's very preliminary in the CMS space. It's for us at least, with the clients that we work with, but the conversation's out there. So that's kind of what we're seeing at this point.
Yeah, it becomes a new content source for you. Really what it ends up being, right, is how do you, if you're going to do a virtual production setup and your CEO is doing an addressing there, how do you take that content from the virtual production setup and feed it into the CMS, right? So that's part of what we look at. Kind of changing direction a little bit. And I'm going to kind of go back to something Katie said when she introduced herself, device management. I think as we look at more and more devices going all over the place, it's not just in our corporate office anymore, right? I mean, if you look at restaurants have anywhere from 5 to 500 devices in their buildings, and you look at retailers, so on and so forth. Let's talk a little bit about device management. I think a lot of people are used to how we control our phones, and I think MDMs and have become more and more important. Katie, you want to talk a little bit about the trends you're seeing in this space?
Sure, absolutely. From a device management perspective, it's so much to unpack, right? Because as I stated earlier, these teams are, and I'm sure there's many of you on the call today that are consistently tasked with doing more and more with systems that are more and more IT centric and less AV in their origin or, inception. So how do these teams run more smoothly? How do they come into work every day and know what they need to focus on? How do they manage, in an enterprise style environment or campus style environment, all of these disparate endpoints and multi-style devices with smaller teams, less and less resources, but more and more endpoints that are part of their purview, right? That's really the question that I've heard for the past few years, really coming out of the woodwork from every end user that I speak to. I don't know what to tell my teams to do when they walk into work every day. I don't know what the problem's going to be before I get there. And I don't know if I'm going to have to put someone on a plane. I don't know if I'm going to have to roll a truck. I don't know X, Y, Z. So how do we really look at all of those devices? And device management is so pertinent, and even more so today than it has been, I think, in the past, because we're talking about large scale geographies or many devices in campuses. Even singular buildings have thousands of digital endpoints that they're responsible for, and then the license attachment that goes with that. So it becomes burdensome for a team of a handful of AV operators or a couple handfuls in the best enterprises, per site or per global organization. So from both an integrator perspective and, provider perspective, I think device management is imperative for us to be able to look for ways to better partner together, work together to make this pain for our end users less and less. And a part of that is obviously the evolution into AI that I hinted at earlier. I think this is something that the industry is in desperate need of solutions around, but historically is something that is under leveraged and underutilized across an enterprise until they need it. And they say, hey, Scott, AVI-SPL, I need a truck at my location because I don't know what's happening over there, right? I can't get there. I don't have anyone skilled on site. You got to roll a truck. So platforms are key, and platforms that are able to condense that workflow and give a more singular approach to those devices, despite, whatever they might be from a control perspective, an audio perspective, a virtual production perspective, a CMS perspective. I think we're going to continue to see a trend of leveraging new tech and new concepts to solve that problem. And MediaVue is actively involved in that thought leadership. at the moment.
So Kirsten, in your software, I mean, obviously device management is pretty important, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so kind of back to Katie's points, that central management, and that's something that we've been good at for a number of years now. And I think the one thing that is unique too in some of these situations, and Katie brought up use cases and all of that. Some of these use cases, I mean, they're very siloed. So, I mean, you look at a university, even a corporate campus, like there's just different groups managing. So what we're seeing from kind of an end user perspective is that there needs to be someone in IT. If you're going to have hundreds and hundreds of devices out there, especially from globally, you need that central management. You need those, say, offline notifications. You need the ability to cache, because at the end of the day, at a local level, so again, going back to a plant or even a department, more times than not, there's not going to be that IT person on site. So how can we eliminate that friction for the customer? It's back to that automation for them. It's the notifications. It's the ability to take screenshots, reboot the player remotely. So, I mean, cloud is definitely very relevant from a software perspective and a CMS perspective. Again, it boils down to who's owning that, and making sure you have the right people, managing from, again, an IT perspective.
Okay. So Scott, when you guys are building these experiences, I mean, I'm assuming this is part of the conversation you're having with them about the device management. I mean, what are some key things that you're sharing with customers and talking about?
Well, AVI-SPL, we have a Symphony, which is Symphony's our device management platform, and it integrates with number of different vendors, but also PCs, as well as there's other integrations you can do as well with lighting, um, and um, and that can be integrated with Power BI, building management systems, things like that. But I think we're one of the things we're seeing more and more of is that end users and clients want to have that single pane of glass. They want to have um, that visibility of what's happening on all of their systems, and with AI, that's going to be a big part of predictive maintenance, um, and making sure that oh, hey, look, this device is unresponsive. Let's cycle it. Let's go ahead and then notify the right person. I know that person is Megan or Kristen, and that kind of aggregation of data and that kind of movement to just the right place at the right time of data, AI is going to be an important part of that. But the other part that Kirsten touched on that's really important is breaking down these silos of building systems, breaking down all of the the building management systems over here on its own network, and the AV systems on its own network. And that plays into sustainability too, because with device management comes power management. And power management is essential to reduce, if we're going to reduce carbon in buildings, which make up about 40% of carbon production is from buildings. So, if you're trying to reach ESG goals, if you're trying to, have multiple, great visibility and more reliable systems, then device management is essential. And that means data normalization, that means converged networks, all those things that the AV and IT world combining, not necessarily a bad thing when you start to, we start to see those goals and the importance of having all of these devices talk to each other on a converged network.
Yeah, and Scott, you hit probably one of a pretty important topic, and we've had a lot of conversations on these at the industry, at shows, and even engaging with organizations like SAVE, and that is around sustainability. And I think this is critical part of that message. Reducing truck rolls, being able to have status on devices, making sure they turn off, they're not running over the weekend. All that stuff plays into it, right? And I think if we look at the strategies, all of you, whether you're dealing with mounts, you're dealing with cables, you're dealing with computers, software, you have to have that conversation with your customers about sustainability and what is their sustainability message. Because how we manufacture our product, how we deliver our product, reduction of cardboard, everything else, it's all part of that message, right? And I know Megan, being the structure side, you don't play into it as much, but you guys actually play in it more than people realize when we talk about sustainability.
That's true. We actually have, in the hospitality space, we have customers that demand that we are part of a sustainability program. So when we were part of Forbes Travel Guide years ago, there was a big sustainability push, and around the same time, a lot of other customers got into it as well. So Marriott, Virgin Cruise Lines, and a bunch of others are part of it's called MindClick. It's a sustainability program. So there's an annual review. It's a very lengthy process. And in doing so, obviously, we delved into our manufacturing process overseas and had to make changes. And I think we've been a part of it for about 5 years now. So we've made drastic changes in how things are manufactured in-house, certainly in Aurora, Illinois, and then obviously outside going to our manufacturing in Taiwan. So it's been an eye-opening experience and very interesting to delve into sustainability. And something we added specifically in the hospitality space, just based on the huge amounts we go through. We're talking, thousands and tens of thousands for one specific customer. So with that, we actually offer a recycling program for them. So we give a credit back. It's a percentage of the sale. If the customer is to take the old Peerless mounts to a recycle facility, just show proof of credit for that. And we're able to offer a discount to help offset that. Certainly, we don't want to pay the shipping to have them come back to Peerless. Then that does not help our carbon footprint. But taking them to a local recycling facility is really the only way we can do it. But I know on the TV side, Rich, there are a lot of electronic recycling and things like that out there now. And a lot of times these are even being reused in other properties I've seen, which is amazing.
It is. And I know the conversation's about trends, but this really isn't a trend. This is a need, right? This is a business direction. And, we had, not long ago, we had a panel we did with SAVE, which is the Sustainability for AV organization, and Sony's been involved in it, and we know others are. This is important. This isn't just something that's going to be the trend for the next 6 months. We're feeling a lot of impact as it is today, but we've got to do this, and we've got to be smarter about it. And I think all of us, whether you're delivering hardware, software, service, it doesn't matter. What is your sustainability message? And if you haven't built one yet, do it. And there are people out there to help you. Like I mentioned, SAVE, and I know VIX has got things that they're doing, and the DSF and others. This is a critical business need. It's not a trend, it's a need as we look at it. So taking kind of a little bit of another jump. And before I do, I want to remind everybody who's on here, please, if you've got questions, post questions. We'll definitely address them during the panel. If we can't get to them, we will follow up with emails as well. But one of the things I want to talk a little bit about, and this is how has the journey changed when we're talking about the customer's journey? If we think about, 15, 17 years ago, when some of us were just starting in the industry, our journey was to hang as many panels as you possibly can, right? And let's talk about content. I know I've been here a little longer in this industry than some. I feel it every day. How has that changed, right? What trends are impacting the customer's journey? Kirsten, I'm going to start with you. What are you all seeing?
So there's a few things with this. I mean, for us, our biggest value prop is our service and support. And the need for that is not going to go away even with AI. And I think just building that partnership, building that trust with the end user, whether you're going through a reseller or it's, direct that way. What we've seen is the pilot that a lot of clients will do. And, adding on and expanding that way, it's with the customer journey, it's not only just that implementation, but it is that ongoing partnership and support to get them to expand to other use cases. So, Megan, you brought up video walls, the curved screens. That's something very relevant with clients that basically just implemented, say, the screens. They hang hundreds of screens, and then now it's these additional solutions they want. So from a CMS perspective, it's really enhancing kind of our softwares, our features in order to support those. Because at the end of the day, they want one single dashboard that they can push content down from an admin perspective, whether it is to a video wall, whether it is to a touch screen, whether it is to, some sort of virtual environment. the simpler, the better, is what we're seeing with that, and the ability to expand very easily.
Okay. So Scott, when you're talking a customer through their journey, I mean, what all are you seeing?
Well, we're seeing that definitely the customer experience needs to be something more than it's been in the past. So uh, everybody now has a supercomputer in their pocket. They're constantly looking at very dynamic content everywhere. And then also the landscape is changing a lot. So, with the Sphere in Las Vegas, we now have very impactful digital experiences on a scale we've never seen before. So we have a lot of clients coming into us saying, okay, how do I really take this customer journey to the next level? And how do I attract in the sea of very, very dynamic visuals everywhere? How do I stand out? And the way we do it is we have great partners on the content, because I think we have a role as we're putting up these DirectView LEDs everywhere on a large scale. Previously, just last year, we installed the largest DirectView LED on a building, LED install in Atlanta for TK elevators. That's now, of course, been shadowed by the Sphere. But without the content, it's just a large wall of, and we have a duty, I think, to help curate that content in an artful way and find those developers, those artists that really can make this digital landscape something worth looking at and something that we want to be around. And AI plays a role in that too. And you talked previously about, how has AI impacted content? If you look at the work of Rafiq Anadol, I don't know if everybody knows him, but he's done some amazing things with machine learning, and doing generative content that creates its own landscape. Calls them machine hallucinations. And he'll just take content from social media, say for instance New York. He'll just take all of the social media posts from New York and put it into his AI algorithms, and it will produce beautiful but abstract landscapes and new worlds that are constantly changing and constantly different. And so that's one thing that AI can help us do is kind of take us on journeys that we haven't been before. But I think we do need to find the right partners to make this content artful and something worth looking at and something worth experiencing.
Yeah, and I think you're hitting on a really important thing that I want to throw to Katie and as well as Megan, and that's this impact of the partnerships and the collaborations, because that's been a big change about this industry. Mm-hmm. We got some out there who are saying they can do it all themselves, and we'll let them go do that themselves. But in reality, this collaboration, these partnerships, I think is transforming the industry quite a bit. So I don't know, Megan, your thoughts first, and I'll go to Katie about it.
Absolutely. I mean, without a partner, we're just a structure, and no one needs just a structure. So, we certainly need an LED partner to go in with us on an experience, and certainly an integrator and someone who can provide the full solution. So, yeah, it's very important to have the entire ecosystem here. So, yeah, for us, we are just a mount. Certainly, we can talk about that, but unless we know what we're mounting, there's really no point to what we are. The mount finally matters, but in the LCD space, we were just an ancillary accessory for a number of years. So we're finally in a place with DirectView LED and these experiences where the mount matters and precision is something that's important. And obviously, great content is key. Without content, the wall's not going to look that good. So, I mean, in the entire ecosystem here, everyone matters.
Katie, what do you think?
Sure. So twofold here for me, right? So going back to some points that Scott brought up earlier, I think there's a lot of noise for the end user who's trying to make a decision. I think as an industry, we struggle with using the same terms to say totally different things. Like, for example, the remote management and monitoring that I offer is very different than what Kirsten and team do from a CMS perspective. Mine is on the hard side, and from the AVI-SPL Symphony side, they're taking an umbrella approach to a multi-device scenario. So all of us are solving this problem from multiple layers. So first and foremost, you have to find a group of partners that can work together, that can provide you as an end user thought leadership, can help you cut through that noise so that the decisions that you're making are sound decisions, organizationally speaking, and they're future forward. They're not just going to work for today, but they're going to work as other technology sets are accommodated for as we move forward. So putting the right foundation in place today, that's a foundation of partnership. That's also a foundation of hardware. That's a foundation of software stack, so that you have that future flexibility across your organizational needs for things that you haven't even thought of today, for what we don't know how AI is going to impact us yet or not today, right? But there's fundamentals that we as industry experts and as partners who have been in this together for a long time can help you navigate through, that I think is key. And partnership is something that we at MediaVue leverage all the time, because where we sit, nobody ever sees, right? We're in the background, we're doing fundamental things in the background that are very pertinent to making sure that your experience is flawless, or that your very large exterior LED wall never goes down and isn't black for all of Atlanta to look at for 3 days as just a black screen. Foundationally speaking, our components are very important, but just like Megan's, aren't usually thought of primarily in the equation. They're afterthoughts, because they're not what people see first. What people see first are Kirsten's elements with the CMS and what the content's doing and how the content's going to look, and what environment Scott and the AVI-SPL team have really fashioned that's impressive on first view. But it's the ongoing day 2 scenarios and the ongoing future ads that, the partnership really becomes important, not just for helping you solution up front, but helping you sustain that environment and grow that environment over time productively. So that's what I'd say.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think one of the things that I've always looked at is, how do we transform the industry together? Right? It isn't a transforming me standing on a rock saying this is my job to transform the industry. No, it's all of us doing it together. And Kirsten, I remember you and I were chatting when we ran into each other in Orlando at the airport at Infocom, just talking, as we were driving to the hotel, how much you're changing your business, right? And how much you guys are redeveloping. And a lot of that's coming not just from the customers, but it's also coming from the other manufacturers.
Yeah, so like for us, we really lean on our integrator partners to provide the hardware solution. So we kind of work the opposite way, right? Because at the end of the day, we're talking to the end users, we're training the end users, we're providing the CMS solution. But Katie, to your point, that background piece is so important, and ensuring that you're not only providing the right hardware and installation for that particular customer, but it's also providing a frictionless experience. They don't want to go to 10 different people to implement this one solution. They want to go through one company, one integrator, in order to accomplish what they're looking for. And one thing, we are seeing more and more, and I know the term is like competition, but that collaboration is key. For a CMS provider, we're not trying to be everything to everybody. So if it's going to work better on a different solution, the customer appreciates that more for passing them off to someone that's going to be able to accomplish their needs, versus trying to jerry-rig a solution that we might not have within the software. So that's something that we've seen more and more, and honestly, it's only helping everybody else. So I think that collaboration and partnership, Katie nailed it. That's very key in our industry, and just making sure that we're catering to that end user at the end of the day.
No, definitely. I think, as we say, we've got to work together, because that's the only way you're going to solve these problems for our customers. I want to take a little bit of a step out of the last few months and what we've seen, and look to each one of you, because I think every one of us was at Infocom. I think we all were. Was there anything that stood out, whether it was an application or a thought or an idea, a new vertical market? Anything that stood out to you that made you kind of stop for a second and think a little bit and go, that's something that I think is going to change the industry. That's something we're going to see more of, right? And maybe I'll start with you, Scott. I mean, what was something maybe you saw?
Impressive. And I'll have to say that one area that I think in experiential design projects that XD firms don't focus enough on is audio. And because they don't, in photos of these projects, you're not seeing the audio. We want the audio to disappear, but we want it to be next level, and we want it to be immersive and impactful. But one of the things that Sony had a great demonstration on directional audio. And Sony has done a phenomenal job of this. And I remember at ISE a while back, there was this one demonstration where you stood on a spot and you had a screen right in front of you, and the woman across from you was speaking in Mandarin. Then you walk a few feet over to the right, you see the same one. You see another woman on the screen speaking English. And then you walk a couple of feet over to the right. Next spot, they're speaking Japanese, and you do not hear anything on the periphery. And I think as we rethink these spaces and we rethink, using these spaces dynamically and being able to, jump on a call here or there, we still need to have these spaces be, have little cubbies where you can just have your meeting and no one else notices. But then also with directional audio, we'll be able to have that spatialization that will be, that will take the immersive environment to the next level too. So there's a lot that is coming with audio, with spatial audio, with beamforming, linear arrays, and I think that's one thing that I'm seeing a lot of movement in. And I was really impressed with Sony's presentation at InfoComm. And I would say another thing, in addition to that, would be how pervasive DirectView LED is getting, price coming down on DirectView LED, form factors, and then also multi-touch and the improvement of multi-touch applications with DirectView LED. And that's really allowing us to move into spaces we haven't previously.
Yeah, we had a little fun with a touchscreen with the DirectView LED solution in our booth. So it was a little bit of it was definitely well received, and it was an interesting idea, and we're seeing more and more of it. So good feedback, and not just because you talked about Sony and our audio solution, but really we don't talk about audio enough, right? I mean, we are an AV industry, and the A is audio, right? That's the very first part of what we do. We don't talk about audio enough.
I totally agree.
Katie, what did you say, or what do you think?
Sure. So for me, there was a lot on the surface that looked the same, but that's deceptive, right? So on the surface, you're walking by people's booths and you're seeing LED screens and you're seeing boxes, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the most impressive overarching umbrella of thought that I saw at InfoComm is what's happening behind the scenes. What's inside of those elements or those devices, or what's in that back end that is new, informative, and more sustainable over time. So, if we go back to Scott talking about Sony, for your purposes here, Rich, the introduction of what Sony's added into display technology, what you've added into video technology from a camera and camera tracking perspective, I think kind of is a great illustration of how we as an industry are adapting components that are pervasive in AV, but doing it in a net new way or a more flawless way. If we walked by all of the LED that we saw at InfoComm, I can guarantee you that across this audience, we were all more impressed with it than we ever have been before. Why is that? Is it just the RGB capture of those pixels? Is it the refresh rate? Is it the content? Is it that it's generative content? So forth and so on. So maybe you were there and maybe you couldn't quite put your finger on what it was that seemed more unique when everything also kind of seemed a little bit the same. It's that back end stuff that you don't see that I think I was most impressed with.
Yeah, because I think we all ignore what's behind the screens. We just look at the bright, shiny objects in front of us. Megan, I'm speaking of someone who's kind of behind the screens there. Megan, what did you see? Besides being in meetings nonstop like most of us were.
Yeah, I think I left the booth maybe twice the entire show. What I did notice was obviously pixel pitches getting smaller and smaller, which is amazing. But also, as we discussed, virtual production used everywhere there. So it's interesting. InfoComm was almost like a mini NAB. So very interesting to see the shift in how everyone is, jumping into that virtual production space. As we talked about, it is going everywhere. Obviously, we've done some massive curves and other unique things in the virtual production space, but we've also done some really unique ones. We just did a 4x3 with a manufacturer in New York City for a virtual production little studio, and it's in a closet for a company. So, they really used the smallest space they could find because that was all that they had available. But we're seeing a lot of that. We're actually, virtual production is really, that's something where I think if you had asked me 2 years ago if we'd be talking about it every day, I would tell you no. So now it's ingrained in every conversation I'm having. We actually built I would say, a studio for a robotic surgery company as well. So, we are seeing this in certainly unique applications that we never thought we would be in. So I would say I'm most impressed with, just the quality of LED, and that virtual production has made its way into, the AV industry in every way. So there is a very fine line between broadcast and what we're doing now. So it's kind of amazing to see.
That line keeps getting thinner and thinner and thinner. Kirsten, last but not least.
Yeah. Well, we're still relatively new to InfoComm. I remember when I first started, we were going to DSC and such, but, I was able to attend my first InfoComm, I think 2017, 2018 as an attendee. We've since started exhibiting, and I learned something new every time. This time I didn't get a chance to walk around as much as I would like. But one thing I would say, kind of back to Katie's point, everything kind of looks the same, but asking the questions like, what is your niche? It's a thing. Not everybody's everything to anybody anymore. It's like, who's kind of your main industries do you serve? Kind of what is your value prop in the industry? And one thing that we did find, the little I got to walk around, was just the how agnostic companies are getting, not only from a hardware perspective, but from a CMS perspective as well, and being able to cater to those niche markets that they work with. I think that was it was interesting because I think back to my first InfoComm, and it definitely wasn't like that back then. And it goes back to the collaboration piece, the partnership piece, and really, which integrators do you work with kind of for your product as well. So that's something that I found, if I kind of compare to what I've seen in the past, that really stood out to me.
Cool. Well, I appreciate it. It's amazing. Time's almost out. The hour goes by quick, doesn't it? I want to thank, Scott, Katie, Kirsten, and Megan for spending time with us today. These are always fun. And, the goal of these are not to end the conversation after we get off here, right? So please keep having the conversations, engage. This is an industry that we all have to be working together on. So our next one is coming up August 29th. It's going to be talking about our new spatial reality display and how it's focusing on the healthcare industry. Those who don't know it, this goes back to experiences. Scott talked about it, and Megan and Katie and Kirsten did as well. This is an amazing glasses-free spatial reality display. So we're really excited to continue to talking about experiences. So thank you once again to my esteemed panelist group here, and let's let us know how we can all help each other. Real quick, roundabout, Scott, how can people get a hold of you?
You can get a hold of me via LinkedIn. Really easy way to get a hold of me with anybody with the XTG team, but Christine Rogers, any of us on that XTG team. But my email is scott.simpson@avispl.com. So reach out to me, and be happy to help you any way we can to make those experiences what they can be.
Okay, Kirsten?
Yeah, kind of like what Scott said, LinkedIn. I'm always on LinkedIn, so feel free to message me. Otherwise, if you want to directly email me, my email is kgibson@reachmedianetwork.com. So if you're looking just to even learn more about a CMS, in general, I'm more than happy to provide more information.
All right, Ms. Zeller.
You can find me on LinkedIn, or email address is mzeller@peerless-av.com.
All right, and Katie.
Very similar, always on LinkedIn. You can find me there very easily. Also, email address is first name dot last name, so katie.valley@MediaVue with a VUE systems.com.
All right, perfect. Well, once again, thank you, and I'll see you on the next RV on AV or the next Text Tuesday. Thank you.